Welcome to the ATA Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Baird, and you're listening to Inside Specialization, our series on the what, why, and how of specializing in a specific field of translation or interpreting. In each episode, members of ATA's Professional Development Committee will interview translation and interpreting specialists. They'll ask about what the work entails, what skills are needed, the pros and cons, and so much more. The goal is to showcase the variety of career paths in translation and interpreting and help working professionals and students understand what's out there, how they can get started, and what they need to succeed. Specialization is arguably the best way to strengthen your translation and interpreting business and stand out from the crowd. We're hoping to bring you one episode a month, and we hope you'll join us on this informative journey. This podcast is brought to you by the American Translators Association. If you'd like to know more about ATA, we'll have some information at the end of the show. All right, now over to the PD Committee and this edition of Inside Specialization.
Hello, listeners. My name is Daniel Sebesta, and I am administrator of ATA's Language Technology Division, and I'm joined by my phenomenal friend and colleague from the LTD, Bridget Hylak. But of course, this podcast isn't about Bridget or me as much as it is about interpreting, technology and interpreting, and of course, today's guest, Dieter Runge. Dieter is a co-founder and vice president of global strategy and business development at Boostlingo. He has been in the IT and digital communications technology space since 1991, and his career is guided by a passion for a better living through technology, particularly as it exists at the intersection of human creativity, cognition, and communication. Language deeply embodies all these three characteristics, which led Dieter into the orbit of language services and language technology at the beginning of the 2000s. Dieter has had the privilege of working in a variety of different roles in business and technology-related research, development, operations, and more. In the language technology sector, he has worked with several prominent language service agencies on several continents. And in 2016, Dieter co-founded Silicon Valley software and technology startup company Boostlingo, which is now based in Austin, Texas. And it quickly became a global leader for software development in the language technology industry. Dieter was recently listed as one of the top 100 influencers in the language industry, and his focus has always been on the expansion of global language access and availability for everyone, everywhere, anytime, and all the time. Ubiquity in language access and availability is something Dieter firmly believes is critical for improving global quality of life and equity. Dieter is an active member of the Globalization and Localization Association, GALA, the Association of Language Companies, ALC, and other industry bodies. He holds a bachelor's degree in radio, film, and television studies and a master's degree in educational psychology. Dieter currently splits his time bicontinentally between the Boostlingo base of operations in Austin, Texas, and his current home base in a beach town near Sydney, Australia. Welcome, Dieter, and we're looking forward to a great conversation.
Thanks, Daniel. Yes, a secret beach town location.
Not to be disclosed, because you don't want
to be disclosed. If you know, you know.
So
great to see you both. Great to see you too. Thank you for having me today.
And I will let you, Bridget, go with the first question.
So Dieter, just such an impressive resume there, and really grateful for your time today and your role and what you're trying to do worldwide and in our industry to try to make language accessible for everyone. I think that's just such an important point. And we heard a few of the organizations that you work with there at the end of your bio, and I really was curious to know, we're coming to you from the American Translators Association. This is one of our podcasts, but in your opinion, what role do you think professional organizations like ours and like many others globally have to play in our industry in this day and age now when we are so really tech oriented? And how familiar are you with organizations like this worldwide, and how closely involved are you with them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that at this point, they have become even more important for practitioners and for organizations that are engaged in the language industry. We we live in accelerated times. Technology is changing. You wake up in the morning and something's changed already. And it's really important for the language community to be able to get together with some sort of cadence to talk about the way things are changing, and also plug into thought leadership and creative ideas about where we're taking this industry. So definitely, I'm active with Gala and with ALC, and here in Australia, the AALC, and also, some other organizations, in the language industry. This year, I participated in Vamos Juntos in Lima, where Daniel and I had some time to sit down and eat some sushi and talk about interpreting, and the ATA. Had a good chance to connect with Andy in Madrid just before the Gala conference this year. And I'll tell you what, it's a really great way to reconnect with folks that love and care about the language industry, and really, we get so heads down in what we're doing every single day in our own businesses, and this is really a great opportunity to reconnect with. We all kind of have the same sort of like hopes and dreams for our industry. So I think they're very important, and things are changing in the regulatory environment and the compliance and governance area. We need to stay plugged into that. Continuing to inspire interpreters and translators to pursue this career, and also look for other cool ways to be part of the language industry. So
We
I
really
think more.
thank you. We have to thank you for that, because that type of participation is something we really appreciate especially on the side of tech leaders that are working with our linguists and working with our industry. Sometimes I think linguists feel underrepresented, so we really do appreciate that attitude. And I think it is essential because we have a lot to bring to the table.
I would agree. And you know what? Every time an interpreter links in with me on LinkedIn, or a translator links in with me on LinkedIn, I add them immediately, because I want to be the biggest advocate for them. Without interpreters and translators, we are nothing. So
Right.
I really want to put that out there to practitioners in the language field.
We're going to quote that now.
Absolutely. Quote me on it.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something. Bridget mentioned how the future looks to be tech oriented more and more. We know that interpreters share expertise in verbal language, but their familiarity with technology differs greatly. I was wondering, in your opinion, in your experience, how can interpreters with different learning styles and levels of IT fluency adapt to the new technologies that the profession is beginning to demand now?
Yeah, well, listen, there's no argument there that learning new technologies and adapting to these new technologies in interpreting is massively important for interpreters to keep pace with the present skill sets required, and then poised for future employability. It really requires a personal, individually tailored approach that accommodates all the various learning styles and levels of IT fluency out there. There are plenty of resources out there that offer a range of training modalities. You've got hands-on workshops, you got online tutorials, you've got peer mentoring. These can all help interpreters with different preferences and needs. Additionally, I think integrating some sort of LMS, learning management systems that track and progress and provide personalized feedback can enhance the training experience. LSPs can deploy those, technology companies can deploy those. Associations could deploy those as well. As a technology company guy, obviously, I'm also keen to ensure that technology that interpreters will use is developed with them in mind. It's essential for technology providers to design and develop, intuitive, user-friendly platforms that, don't introduce a massively steep learning curve. And I mean that for all interpreters, regardless of their technical background. By addressing the differences in learning and comfort styles with technology, companies can build awesome products and still ensure that interpreters and language professionals are well prepared to meet the demands of a modern remote interpreting scenario.
And
And
really,
again, I just want to say again that the remote interpreter is a professional linguist, and I want to point out an IT worker these days. There's just no escaping that reality. And in the information age, technology upskilling is just a fact of life. We really need to get the new tech into the hands of language students in colleges and university. And well, that's a much longer conversation, but we've got to get these folks, hands on to the technology, because that's going to be their future.
yep, it's absolutely correct. And, along these lines, there is so much changing. It is, we've already kind of touched upon all this, not just how our industry is expanding, but how we have to keep pace with it. And that goes hand in hand with regulatory, right? Because we can only deploy things as quickly as they are regulated, at least safely and legally. So right now, there's so many courts and hospitals and doctors' offices, a lot of different types of organizations that differ on the rules, the regulations, and even the comfort levels of these professionals and their clients using remote interpreting systems. So how would you recommend that a unified standard be adopted and introduced either nationally, internationally, or on a corporate level?
Yeah, that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
sir.
really is. This is a question near and dear to my heart, right? It's important for both interpreters and for requesters and end users of remote interpreting services. As a requester, whenever someone connects to an interpreter, it's always kind of a giant leap of faith on the part of that requester or end user procuring interpreting service. When someone requests and receiving interpreting support, how do they really know if that interpreter certification or level of proficiency is appropriate for their needs? They generally don't. They're just usually just acquiescing, having some faith that everything is in order. And for interpreters, a national standard certification is an important way to establish a professional credentialing to assert that it is a profession that requires training and experience and special professional abilities, and that not just anyone who is bilingual can do that. And there is ongoing upskilling and professional development involved, and adherence to established metrics that matter. And these all need to be recognized by government and industry. I'm based here in Australia, and I always say, listen, if Australia and New Zealand can do it, USA can do it, right? We have NATI, which is a national certifying organization in Australia, which New Zealand has just adopted. Singapore is looking at it now, and it's there are other countries that are looking at it as a national standard. But we've also got great organizations in the US. And introducing a unified standard for remote interpreting in the US, it'll require sort of a multi-pronged, multi-tiered approach, but it's going to involve some coordinated lobbying and collaboration between stakeholders at all different levels, nationally, governments, industry bodies that need to work together to establish these regulatory frameworks that prioritize the accuracy, confidentiality, accessibility. And there are organizations that we can tap into. ASTM, International Organization for Standards, ISO, can play a crucial role in setting these, globally recognized standards. At the corporate level, language service of languages and language technologies companies can begin to align their own internal policies with these standards and actively participate in industry discussions to ensure that their systems meet or even better exceed regulatory requirements out there. I just think, harmonizing this process will help enhance the consistency and reliability of the remote interpreting services that are out there, but will also build stronger trust amongst, users across all different sectors. And like I said before, there's some already terrific certification organizations and associations in the US. I mean, APA, of course, and CCHI, CHIA in California. All these organizations getting involved in that dialogue. I think we need to get there at some point. So
and as a quick follow-up to that, there just occurred, are there any other industries that we could look to that actually also had to get there, let's say? You just said we had to get there.
Yeah, so listen, I came from the e-learning world. I started my entree into the language industry started in the e-learning space. Worked for a company called Skillsoft, which may or may not be familiar, but we built learning management systems there and learning content management systems, and we created learning objects, which were based originally on AICC, the aviation industry. I don't know what CC stands for anymore, compliance, something or other,
Right.
which was a standard around building online training. And then from there went to SCORM, shareable content shareable content object reusable something, SCORM. And what a great model for us to look at, because when you look at all the e-learning platforms that are out there and how, like Moodle grew and all the different areas of online learning, it all harkens back to looking at the AICC and SCORM compliance requirements there. So, you could look at the legal field and the medical field. You can't be a nurse practitioner without passing certain national boards. You can't. I don't know about
Right.
you, but when I walk into a doctor's office, I always look. I'm
Right.
like, oh, all right. Where did you go to school?
Right.
Even in legal, you've got to pass the boards. But even I go take my car in to be fixed. I want to see that the car mechanic is has some proficiency there, and I look and I recognize the accreditation. I'm like, all right, I feel a little better now. And that's sort of where we need to get just across the industry, right?
Right.
It's a challenge. It's been I mean, let's be realistic here. We've been fighting this race to the bottom in the language industry for years, since day one. And the only way to really like reinforce, hey, you can't just pull somebody, off the nurse's station to interpret. You can't just, bring your uncle who's marginally bilingual in
Right.
and think it's okay. It's not okay. It's a hard job.
Yes, sir.
It's a real job, and it requires
Very
training, experience, emotional maturity. There's a lot going on, and we need to reestablish that, precedent for people to understand. Not everybody can be a translator. Not everybody can be an interpreter.
Thank you.
So,
And an important part, like you said, of that is technology upskilling. Many interpreters nowadays are feeling threatened by AI already in action, or as a prospect for the future. How do you see AI impacting the interpreting profession in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Will it be a tool, a collaborator, or a competitor? What is your vision for the future of interpreting? Do you see AI and humans working together in the years to come?
Shakespeare had a saying, right? Nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so.
Mm-hmm.
And I think AI is here to stay. It's not going back in the bottle. It's poised to become increasingly integral part of the interpreting profession and translation, profession over the next 5 to 10 years and beyond, right? But I want to take a more positive and productive stance on this inevitability. Like any new technology, its role will be likely evolve more as a productivity tool, a collaboration tool, a collaborative support system, rather than a direct competitor or existential threat. Heralding the doom spiral for the profession of language, interpreting and translation. I think I have an obligation, responsibility to as a tech purveyor to give a message of positivity and hope, and I genuinely believe it, right? Back in the day, when we started Boostlingo, people were like, "Oh, remote interpreting is going to kill interpreting jobs." It did the exact opposite.
Right.
Pandemic hit, and suddenly interpreters were still working. Guess what? You can work from your bedroom, your home, whatever, what have you, and work we still need to communicate no matter what, even if we're in lockdown. And what it did really was it effectively put the spotlight on a technology that was ready for prime time, but people just didn't use it for whatever reason. But we were forced to use it, and suddenly, we're all part of the Zoom boom economy. And guess what? If you're an interpreter that understands how to use these tools, you can support interpreting from your home office across the entire planet. That tech was there and it was ready, and lo and behold, it worked great. But AI can handle high volume, low stakes tasks. It can provide real-time support in environments where human interpreters aren't available. It's a valuable asset in expanding access to very urgent interpreting services that may be needed. But that said, the human interpreter's ability to understand context, cultural nuances, body language, euphemisms, sarcasm, flowery allegorical statements, but most importantly, being able to observe human emotion and body language and communication. This ensures that interpreters will continue to be indispensable, and particularly in complex, high stakes or very sensitive multilingual communication interactions. Who can look 50 years down the road what AI is going to do? I'm going to be running a taco stand at the beach somewhere, and with top shelf tequila shots. That's my goal.
Okay, so that's why you moved to Australia. Now we know.
Yeah, it is part of the plan. But point being, I never say never on anything, and AI is blowing my mind on a daily basis. But I am just excited by it because every single technology, every single industry is going to be impacted or affected by it.
Right.
And that's just a fact. So, you can feel threatened by it, or you can go, well, how can this facilitate and launch my career? This is here to stay. So I need to figure out, what to do with it.
And I think along those lines too, AI and remote interpreting has opened up entirely new markets, huge income streams for certain
100%.
interpreters. And now some interpreters will only do remote. There's some of them, they don't want to, have the added effort of traveling, of maybe, dressing up particularly special. So it definitely has opened up those new areas. And I just had a follow-up question here. The ATA has a committee, the Interpreter Professional Advisory Committee, and the committee I've been honored to work on. And in a guidance that we recently worked on, we noted that unlike with translation, end users of interpreting services are impacted differently depending on how services are delivered. And, I have, very long history in interpreting myself, and definitely see this, whether I'm observing or interacting. And I just wondered if you feel that interpreting services delivered over Zoom or even Gen AI based services may affect recipients differently, or potentially adversely affect the communication that they receive? And if so, how is that handled? We did note that specifically because I can think of a lot of different scenarios of how this is completely a very appropriate comment. So just wondering your opinion on that.
Yeah, listen, interpreting services delivered over Zoom or through some AI supported platforms, they can, and indeed they do, often affect, the recipients differently. And often these differences are significant. But I mean, with or without AI already, the medium through which any remote interpreting support is delivered can impact everything from the accuracy, or the fidelity of the interpretation to the rapport between the interpreter and the participants. And, for instance, body language, tone, other nonverbal cues are way harder to read and convey in any kind of virtual environment. And that can potentially lead to misunderstandings or missed understandings or observations, or just a plain lack of connection with the requester. AI-based and supported services, while they're impressive in many of their technical capabilities and possibilities, they still lack the nuanced understanding of context and emotional intelligence that human interpreters can bring to the party. This can and it does lead to communication that can feel mechanical or impersonal, and this is obviously, particularly true in sensitive or high stakes situations. So again, it's really important to acknowledge the accessibility and convenience that these technologies can provide, especially in scenarios where access to human interpreters is not immediately available. But the key is going to be to use these tools judiciously and always consider that, the context of situation and the needs of the end users, when choosing, how best to deliver that interpreting service. Are we going to use AI here? Are we going to use a human here? Are we going to use a hybrid, situation? And that's really, that's where I think it's headed anyways.
Right. Great. Understood. Thank you.
Let's turn to conference interpreting now. Many conferences are obviously multilingual and they require several different interpreters for different languages. For those of our listeners who would like to look under the hood a bit more, how do tech-based interpreting platforms handle these multiple languages simultaneously and ensure seamless transitions between them without compromising accuracy or fluency?
Yeah, so the RSI space is super interesting, and the tech evolution there has just been amazing the last couple of years. Tech-based interpreting.
If I just point out RSI, we're talking about remote simultaneous interpreting here. So just
correct. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Apologies. If I start throwing on acronyms and getting out of hand, you just reach out and smack me. So these tech-based interpreting platforms handle the complexity of multilingual conferences by leveraging a lot of new advances in software development to support the simultaneous interpretation in multiple languages. These platforms, at least the good ones, the purpose-built ones, often have features that allow you to switch or toggle between languages seamlessly using an interface that can manage multiple audio channels. So that's kind of the whole point behind an RSI platform, actually. The platform can assign different languages to different channels, and attendees can select the language that they prefer to listen to, and it ensures that everyone has access to the content in their preferred language. But some of these platforms recently have also included AI support for captioning, speech to text, multilingual speech to text. So as you imagine, you're speaking in English or Spanish, and then in 5 or 10 other different languages, there's captioning in other languages of interest in the event. And there's even speech-to-speech capabilities out there, but I'm still sitting on the ledge watching this tech because there are some challenges with latency, but it's going to get there, and it's getting better. It's getting smarter. That said, to ensure accuracy and fluency, these platforms rely on experienced RSI professional interpreters, like folks who are skilled in managing transitions between languages. The software will include tools to help interpreters, such as glossaries and real-time text feeds, and ability to coordinate with and tag in and out with other interpreters that they may be working with inside that same interpreting session. And the AI and machine learning tools are also increasingly being used to assist with terminology consistency and real-time suggestions, maintaining fluency during some of these complex or fast-paced discussions. I mean, it's really amazing to watch. The cognitive load on conference interpreters can be profound. I'm always amazed. I can barely walk and chew gum at the same time on some days. So I just hats off to the simultaneous remote interpreter. It's always a thing of amazement to watch.
It is extremely complex, and I've participated in a lot of these events on all sides, right? Both behind, in front of, managing. But I wonder about the complicatedness or simplicity. Again, you said platforms that are built well, which is a key,
Yeah.
right? Because there are really crummy ones that make life hell, frankly, and then other ones that do the job. But how about on the load on the interpreter, because microphones, receivers, transmitters, these transmission technologies is complicated enough in live settings. So how do remote systems juggle these moving parts so as to accommodate the interpreters?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it needs to be a well-oiled machine to make it a seamless event. But this is also at the heart of modern remote interpreting systems, right? How to juggle the complexity of microphones, receivers, transmitters, as you mentioned, and all the other transmission technologies, and integrating all of these components into one sort of unified experience on that platform. And these platforms, they usually leverage some sort of cloud-based technology to manage the transmission of the audio and the video signals to allow for that, web real-time communications across disparate locations. It requires, deep collaboration between audio engineers, software developers, and also experienced conference interpreting experts to address all of these challenges. When I talk about challenge, I'm like audio clarity, audio volume spikes, acoustic shock syndrome is a real thing, man. It's
yes, sir.
It's no joke. And we've recently we've made some new discoveries in that area. You could talk about acoustic shock syndrome for an hour.
Right.
It really is. And there's also issues with synchronization and latency. It's a little bit above my pay grade, but there are these advanced algorithms that are being used to compress and transmit data more efficiently, ensuring the quality of the audio remains high, but the bandwidth, even if there's bandwidth considerations, and Lord knows we've all walked into situations where bandwidth is really wonky.
Right.
Mostly it's engineering magic through a little bit of technology, sorcery, and alchemy, right? But in all seriousness, the complexity of integrating all these elegantly designed components and then maintaining the ease of use for interpreters and participants, it is an art form, and it also a testament to the increased sophistication of these systems. The user interfaces are just better designed these days, and they're more intuitive. With the interpreter in mind, so they can focus on their tasks without being bogged down by needing to do any sort of advanced technical, work. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of, and I hear this from tons of RSI interpreters, we had to, troubleshoot the system. We had to provide technical support, and I'm just like, yeah, I cannot see that going away in the near future. This is just part of the job. And unfortunately, there's going to be a little bit of it. Usually, though, there's somebody. Hopefully, there's somebody engaged from the tech side who is producing and engineering in the background. That typically is for the purpose-built RSI technology out there.
And just one follow-up for clients. They need to hear what you just said about how extremely complicated the technology is, because this isn't just an interpreter per minute per hour and complaining about rates and all the money and millions and millions of dollars that goes into making these platforms what they are is now a part of the cost. And then in order to compensate correctly these interpreters and translators, it's a bigger picture, some ways simplified, some ways much more complicated. And so I just want to put that out there. Cost is becoming a big conversation.
It's such an important point, right? I mean, I'm sure you get it all the time where people will come and request, oh, we want to do this in 25 languages. And, and then, when you start to articulate the reality of what that means,
Right.
Suddenly they're like, oh,
Right.
and they just simply, it's a constant continual process of educating the end user,
Absolutely.
end users out there, because it is a complex process. It's when it's firing on all pistons, it's amazing, and I don't think people appreciate it enough how much technology and human capability must be blended to make the excellent RSI event come down and happen. So
Yes.
yeah.
Dieter, I have another topic that we could easily spend an hour on, but let's try briefly. The IPAC report that Bridget already mentioned raises concerns about data privacy. So I was wondering, how do technology powered interpreting platforms address the collection and storage of sensitive information that they collect during interpreting sessions? How do they ensure compliance with regulations such as GDPR in Europe and others around the world?
Yeah. This is my life every single day of every week. And it is ratcheting up. And if anybody doesn't believe that, the data security questionnaires are just becoming more robust every week.
Yeah.
It's a growing global concern. Most technology enhanced software systems, interpreting systems, have to address their data collection and storage posture. They have to obviously be sure that they're able to secure sensitive information, but really any corporate or personal data needs to be collected and stored safely. SaaS companies implement extremely robust security measures that have to align with global data protection regulations, such as the GDPR in Europe or HIPAA for healthcare markets in the US. There are data protection laws in literally every country. And again, these systems typically employ end-to-end encryption for data transmission, ensuring that your information shared during these interpreting sessions is protected from unauthorized access. But they also have to include secure storage solutions where that data is either anonymized. I can never say that word right. Anonymization, or be encrypted in some way at rest to prevent data breaches. And wow, if this wasn't a banner year for data breaches already, and it's only August. Yeah, so to ensure compliance with GDPR and similar regulations, language platforms have to have clear data handling policies, including, obtaining very explicit consent from users before collecting and storing their data. They need to provide users with options to access, correct, or delete their data, as well as, being able to opt out of data collection. And most software developers of any notable scale will perform regular audits, penetration tests, some kind of third-party assessment, needs to be conducted with some regular cadence to ensure that their systems adhere to, legal and local legal and regulatory standards, but also further afield. It really is a global concern. And they also try, most software companies I know also try to minimize, their implement some sort of data minimization practice of some sort where they collect only the data that is absolutely necessary for that service, retaining it for only just as long as it's needed or required by the law. And then, make sure they provide that transparency with end users and by extension to their customers about how that data will be used and the steps taken to protect it. So it's fundamental and critical in building, that kind of confidence and trust, and ensuring, most importantly, regulatory compliance. Every single LSP, every single language technology company, everybody out there really, is going to need to deal with this now, and with increasing, overview from government regulatory agencies and just industry watchdog groups and everything. It's a fact, and it's getting, we've all had it, and we've all been phished and scammed, and they're getting more clever. You used to just be able to look at an email with all the spelling errors and go, yeah, that's I can tell that this is a phishing expedition.
Right.
Now I'm continually constantly amazed by the sophistication of online data phishing scams and things like that. So we're in a new era.
And it's there are new roles emerging here, and with good reason. New departments emerging because we absolutely need them in order to be in compliance, in order to really even digest and understand the legislation, because it's coming every single day, every single week, like you said. a corporate is coming up with stuff different from government. So it is a huge maze to get through. So
I would, 100%. And I would just say this, if I could just, appeal to language service providers and tech companies out there and startups and anybody that's in this language industry, it's like, have a dedicated CISO, chief information security officer. Like, you gotta have someone whose entire role
right,
is focused on this. It's no longer a part-time job anymore, not in this day and age anymore. It really is a full-time gig. And I know, I mean, we have to pursue, as a SaaS platform, we have to pursue certain compliance and accreditations just to even be considered for certain tenders and offers that are out there. I mean, we're SOC 2 compliant. It's not an easy process,
right,
and there are even more onerous paths to security, setting your security posture out there for federal government contracts and things that some organizations just can't get there because they don't have either the time, resources, or funds to do that.
right.
So it's becoming more important, more and more important.
If I could just quickly switch, I know this is another one, every single answer, I wish we had like a 5-hour, I wish we could do a, Dieter, app series like season 1 and 2, because every one of these questions could literally take us down lots of rabbit holes. But just quick question that is really near and dear to my heart, as language accessibility, governed by law, is another form of access that is required to be provided. How do technology enhance language service providers ensure that interpreting is accessible now at the intersection of other disabilities, or such as in individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, or those with cognitive impairments? That becomes layered accessibility issues, right? And so do you have any response there? It is a little, like I said, another little rabbit hole. Maybe we could get a quick thought from
No, listen, I mean, accessibility is a super important thing for tech companies everywhere. It's ensuring that interpreting services are accessible to individuals with disabilities. It really involves incorporating very inclusive design principles and providing multiple modes of communication. For individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, platforms can offer real-time captioning. But more importantly, I mean, this is a big piece of what we do is providing sign language interpretation services. And captioning can be done by integrating live captioning services directly to the platform. But and what is more likely these days also is using some of these AI-powered speech-to-text technologies are being deployed as well. But there, we absolutely need to provide support to the the sign language communities out there. For folks with cognitive impairments, there are ways to simplify the user interface, designing to be more accessible. You can provide more clear, concise instructions, provide options for adjusting the complexity of the language, can make that service a little more accessible. Targeted training or tutorials on how to use a platform to help empower these folks with disabilities to engage more fully with the service. You could incorporate assistive technologies for sight impaired folks. Screen readers, voice recognition software can be used in conjunction with platforms. The bottom line is prioritizing accessibility in the design and development of the software right from the get-go. Technology providers have to strive to make it a better experience for individuals with disabilities. We need to provide the tools and the platform environments that can cater to the specific needs of all users, regardless of their abilities, disabilities, what have you. This has really been an important thing for all, tech innovators out there. And there's been some really strong and important recent legislation around accessibility
Yes.
in Europe and even in the US recently, which I think is really helping to get the industry on board and strive to do better for end
Right.
users with disabilities everywhere. So I'm very optimistic about the way, and I'll say this, I think AI is going to help make life, easier and better for folks with disabilities as well. I firmly believe that.
Peter, we have time for one last question. And with that, I want to turn a bit to the future again. You already talked about AI, language access, security. What are the most exciting developments or innovations that you see being a front runner on the technology side? What do you see on the horizon? What do interpreters working with these and new platforms have to prepare for?
Daniel, this is my favorite question to come up. Don't we have another hour? Come on. Listen, I could talk forever on this, but listen, every day I see really cool stuff, and I think I need to show that I personally, I'm like, I got to show the product team this, and then I realize they will find me, they will tie and bind my arms and legs and take me out to the shed if I propose even one more new feature this year. So, hey, Brian D'Agostino, what's up, dude? I think as we've discussed some of these, exciting developments on the horizon of interpreters, integration of AI, machine learning features and functionality to enhance real-time translation and interpretation capabilities. These are super cool. Platforms becoming more sophisticated and spooky smart. Some of it you just shake your head and you go, wow. But there's no doubt that they're driving better efficiencies, and providing awesome productivity and creativity tools to interpreters who are willing to, do the time to learn how to use them. Utilizing AI can provide interpreters with so many cool things, real-time suggestions, glossaries, context-based translations, and all this stuff is, it's going to enhance the accuracy of interpreting and translation, but it also will allow professional, language folks to handle more complex assignments with confidence. What do I think is cool? I think there's going to be some cool innovation in the use of augmented reality and virtual reality to create immersive training and communication environments for interpreters. These technologies allow interpreters, either to practice in simulated environments to practice their craft, or even in real-time environments that mimic or augment real-world scenarios, and immersed in this a new way to communicate. There's one area that I'm keeping my eye on right now, and I'm actively communicating with the technology providers and developers in, and that I'm particularly excited about, and that's the world of holoportation and beamed communications. And don't know what that is. These are those ultra high definition video portals that can beam live 3-dimensional interactive transmission of an interpreter into a device that's effectively no bigger than a door frame.
Star Wars.
This is, oh man, it is, when you see it, your mind is blown.
Wow.
And we've actually already started experimenting with this technology in the ASL space anyways, and the results are amazing. Like, the Australian government is looking at deploying this technology to address the deficit of teachers in rural Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, the application for interpretation of this technology is amazing. When deaf and hard of hearing folks saw it for the first time, they were laughing so hard because it was just so real. It's three-dimensional, 6 degrees of complete,
right.
When an ASL interpreter now is not limited to a flat video, you don't miss any of the signs. It's 3-dimensional. It's amazing. So
like the Vision Pro sort of.
Yeah, well, as you can tell, I'm really excited about that. But
That's cool.
the remote interpreting platforms, they're evolving rapidly and with new features that allow for the seamless multi-language support, real-time collaboration among interpreters, and you're also going to see a lot of integration with other platforms and tools out there. So, this is really important now in this world where remote work and virtual events are more and more becoming the norm, right? So, I think you're going to see a lot of really cool tech that will support the needs, and you're going to see a lot of integration across adjacent technologies that are going to make the experience even more interesting and helpful. So
it's almost like
I'm
the
bullish on all of it.
remote interpreters are back in person in a sense, right? With that, you've just blown our mind. And I think we're back.
That's
cool.
absolutely intriguing, and there's a lot to keep our interpreter members on their toes. Thank you so much, Dieter, for sharing your insights with our ATA membership and our podcast listeners today. This was very insightful. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Bridget. Absolutely a delight to join you here today.
Thanks so much.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
You've been listening to Inside Specialization, our series on the what, why, and how of specializing in a specific field of translation or interpreting. Big thanks to everyone involved in the production of this episode. ATA's PD committee developed and coordinated the interview. Mixing and editing was done by Derek Platts. ATA headquarters provided editorial and technical support. Now, if you learned anything new in today's podcast, I bet there's somebody out there who would like to know it too. Don't be stingy. Tell them about us. I've gotten to know so many great podcasts that way. I promise they'll thank you for it. And if you're not an ATA member, listen up. I've been a member for over 20 years. I can honestly say that ATA launched my freelance career, and I've never looked back. Nowadays, the demand for translators and interpreters is at an all-time high, but finding quality work isn't easy. ATA membership can make a difference. And ATA isn't just for translators or interpreters. Individuals, companies, and organizations can become members. We have teachers, professors, hospital administrators, language company owners, technology developers, as well as language companies, universities, hospitals, and government agencies. Go to ATA's website, atanet.org, for details. Or check out past episodes of this podcast where we talk about the benefits of membership and what's currently happening in the association. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Talk to you again soon.